Okay, so lot going on, lot that's very disturbing. We're going to get to that with regard to the latest Israeli strike on Gaza, but wanted to start with this. You can put this up on the screen. Latest numbers are that 67 people were wounded. These were all soldiers wounded Sunday after a drone struck an IDF base in Israel. This was a Hezbollah drone strike. You also had a number of people, four who I believe were killed. So you've had a significant number of casualties here. And part of what is so significant here is that this drone was able to get through their, extensive anti-missile defense systems. So Iron Dome failed, and they're looking into why that happened and how this was able to get through. Apparently, there was another drone that attempted to get through as well. They were able to intercept that one, but this one was successful. The Army, they say, is investigating why no sirens are sounded and why interception attempts failed, as well as the drone's route. In addition, earlier in that same day, 28 IDF soldiers were wounded by anti-tank fire in two separate incidents in Lebanon. We can put up on the screen this image of the cross-border attacks because I just don't want people to get a false impression here. So obviously Hezbollah has been firing back, but it's still a very one-sided conflict overall. It's very, very unbalanced towards the Israeli side. You have 12,000 roughly combined cross-border attacks. 9,891 of those were Israeli attacks on Lebanon. You've had 2,163, which were Hezbollah and others attacks on Israel. Total combined deaths, 1,562. Of those, almost all of them were Lebanese people, 1,529. Just 33 Israelis killed in these cross-border attacks. Nevertheless, are obviously incredibly significant in terms of Israeli sense of security. They've been sold by their leadership class that the way for them to be safe and to be able to return to northern Israel towns that have been evacuated since October 7th is through war, is through bullets and guns and missiles and drones and bombs. And they also, I think really thought they had degraded Hezbollah to the point that it was probably just going to kind of fall apart. Assad assassinated Nasrallah. You had that massive pager and walkie-talkie attack, and Hezbollah showing here that they still have a lot of fighting power and still have an ability to strike within Israel. Important, though, I really want to emphasize the fact that, Hezbollah here striking a legitimate military target. And I think a lot of people should ponder the fact that the military that we're backing, which we're about to talk about in a minute, the IDF, the one that we're shipping the bombs for, just attacked a hospital with a tent city of refugees filled with patients, and children and women. And the ones that we call terrorists are attacking legitimate military targets and going after soldiers.
Well, what I think it highlights is more the lack of security and the ability for them to actually penetrate IDF defenses. And it just is the same thing where, look, yes, you can wipe out Nasrallah and all that, but everything you kept saying here, Hezbollah is a much more capable force. Also, I want everybody to understand how much that this is the preview of what warfare looks like in the 21st century. This drone hitting a cafeteria, this has been going on in Ukraine now for 3 straight years. And that's exactly how they've been able to kill a ton of Ukrainians, to kill a ton of Russians. There are so many horrible drone videos out there of them just following people. So the point is that this type of warfare is exactly the way that they're trying to get around traditional weapon systems, rockets, missiles, and all of that, penetrate it very, very small, and still be able to really, cause significant amounts of damage. This is one of the very deadly incident inside of Israel for the IDF. Another one is, let's underscore the U.S. commitment to this. Not nearly enough people are understanding the gravity of what has now been announced by the Biden administration. Let's put this up there on the screen. U.S. is going to deploy 100 troops to operate an advanced anti-missile system in Israel amidst high tensions. What we are talking about is the THAAD missile defense system, the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense. I was actually pretty familiar with that. I covered a lot of it with respect to South Korea. It is one of our most advanced anti-missile defense technologies, and it is one of those that is, you can see it actually in front of you on the mobile trucks. It makes it very easy to deploy and all of that. But the point is that if you think about this system and why it's so important, is it is physically incapable to run it it without American soldiers on the ground. It's one of the reasons why the Ukrainians have been begging America for a THAAD system basically since the beginning of the war. And we're like, no, we're not going to do it because we'd have to put our own guys on the ground. But now think about this. Not only would we have our guys operating an anti-missile defense system, but what do you think the #1 target of a drone or any of these other places is going to be? Is that. And so that means we're putting our people in an extremely high-risk situation, and nobody in the U.S. political establishment is saying a damn word about it. Joe Biden promised there would be no troops, that boots on the ground, for the defense of Israel. Well, already that was a lie with the whole Gaza pier situation. It was a lie previously whenever 3 of our guys were killed in that Jordanian, Syria insane raid, or in the drone attack, which still nobody's ever answered any questions about. But this is the most direct intervention by the United States. It also just increases, it also shows the Israelis brag about Arrow 3 and Arrow 2 and all of that.
Yeah.
Well, but when it comes down to it, and there's some worries with Iran, what are they doing? And they're like, hey, we need THAAD. What does that tell you? It shows you that their missile defense technology, which we pay for and build, is still not all that operable, and they need some of the highest level of U.S. defense to keep them where they're at. But worse, I think, is that it gives them the ability, they can do whatever they want now. You can go and hit a nuclear site if you want to.
That's right.
Now you've got Big Daddy America and 100 U.S. soldiers who are defending you.
Yeah.
And this is basically an insurance policy for the coming massive strike on Iran.
That's correct.
That will happen. And that's why I'm scared, because now our people are the ones who are in danger.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And you're so right to point out, too, that, listen, our boots are already on the ground because we have 40,000 people in the region, and it's a regional war. And if you think it's not, just look at all of the countries that are being bombed right now. Like, you're deluding yourself if you don't think that those soldiers are already at risk. But with regard to this move specifically, we're getting these reports that Biden talked to Bibi and he doesn't want him to strike Iranian oil infrastructure, that he doesn't want him to strike Iranian nuclear sites. But then you're giving him all the protection in the world so that he can operate with impunity and not bear any of the costs. So again, obviously Bibi is going to do exactly what he wants, because you are not using any leverage. In fact, you're doing the opposite of that. You are enabling this behavior because they will not bear any of the cost. Instead, we're putting our soldiers' lives at risk and putting this, expensive system into the region. It's just, from a policy perspective, it's utterly, utterly insane. But that's where we are, and the total lack of any discussion, debate, controversy around this is astonishing. It's utterly astonishing what we stand on the precipice of and how little care, concern, discussion, debate there is in the United States Congress, or certainly on the cable news airwaves. At the same time, we wanted to make sure and bring you this. The Israelis struck UN peacekeepers, these Irish peacekeepers who, this UN peacekeeping force has been in southern Lebanon for quite a long time. And the Israelis told them, you need to leave. And they said, no, we're going to hold our post. Like, we have an important mission. You don't get to tell us when we're going to leave, so we're going to stay. So Benjamin Netanyahu, you can put this up on the screen. It was in Hebrew, so I'll just read some of the translation here. He demanded that these forces be evacuated removed from South Lebanon immediately. He says that they're going to be used as human shields by Hezbollah. He says specifically, I appeal to the UN Secretary General, your refusal to evacuate UNIFIL soldiers has turned them into hostages of Hezbollah. So we all know when the Israelis break out that human shield language, that means you're a target. That means we are not going to care whether you live or die. In fact, if anything, we're happy for you to die. It wasn't long before we got this. Irish troops, quote, accounted for after reported Lebanon strike. UN sources told Reuters that Israeli troops opened fire at 3 positions held by UN peacekeepers in southern Lebanon on Thursday. This United Nations interim force in Lebanon has been there since 1978. It's meant to monitor hostilities, helps to ensure humanitarian access to civilians. And they put out a long thread on Twitter on Thursday morning saying that 2 peacekeepers were injured after an IDF tank fired its weapon towards an observation tower at their headquarters, directly hitting it and causing them to fall. It said their injuries are not serious, but they do remain in the hospital. They also fired IDF soldiers on a UN position in another town, hitting the entrance to the bunker where peacekeepers were sheltering and damaging vehicles and a communication system. An IDF drone was observed flying inside the UN position up to the bunker. And in addition, peacekeepers at that position reported the firing of several rounds which emitted smoke. Despite putting on protective masks, 15 of those peacekeepers suffered effects, including skin irritation and gastrointestinal reactions after the smoke entered the camp. The peacekeepers are receiving treatment. So IDF is firing on and gassing, apparently, UN peacekeepers now. And, the silence from the United States of America and the rest of the supposedly committed to human rights West is absolutely deafening.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous, isn't it? And it's also just funny because if you think about the way that we would respond, let's say if this was a country called Russia, well, then things fall apart now, don't they?
Can you imagine?
Of course I can. I already know because we've seen it. Look at all these. Look at the number of times that the way Biden and all of them talk about, the United Nations is spoken out against the Ukraine invasion and all of that. So if you're Russia, also, what's the lesson from this? They're like, yeah, we can just do whatever we want. They're like, they don't mean anything. If you're China, if you're any of these people, you're like, look at these. These people are a joke. They're like, all these international institutions mean nothing. I mean, the entire basis of their theory of the international rules-based order and all of that is being undermined here. Also, again, I just can't get away from the cost. That costs $1 billion. Plus, we have $100 people who are put in harm's way. The general back of the napkin math is it takes $1 million per year per soldier to keep them deployed abroad. So that's $100 million, and then you add in another bill. They're like, okay, $1.1 billion here just to make sure that they can do whatever they want to Iran, not to mention the $1 billion we just fired off and more. Like, why should we pay this bill? Why is this worth it? For what possible reason? And then the damage to the overall U.S. image is just ridiculous now at this point.
Oh, I mean, it's, what can you even say at this point? Like, there's things that we're about to talk about this. Things that would have been a controversy a year ago now just happen and no one even notices. I mean, remember there was a whole propaganda campaign around justifying the invasion of one hospital. Now hospitals just get bombed, schools just get bombed, refugee shelters just get bombed. UN peacekeepers, okay? And now we're bombing the hell out of Beirut and, dropping 86 2,000-pound bunker buster bombs to get one dude, slaughtering civilians who are not Hamas, have nothing to do with Hamas, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just like a shoulder shrug. I don't know. I mean, it's so incredibly dark. And it is also totally clear that the most nihilistic, most cynical analysis of Israeli plans for genocide, ethnic cleansing, regional war with Iran, dragging us into it, the most cynical analysis that occurred on, October 8th turned out to be 100% correct, if not sort of understating where we'd ultimately head.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.